I do swear that the following testimony is true. I swear by this divine symbol, the 8-rayed star, Shamash of divinity. Namaste, namaskaram. In Hebrew, the word Jehovah consists of the 4 letters Yod Heh Vau Heh, and was termed the Tetragrammaton, or 4-lettered name, and it was forbidden to the Jews to pronounce it. It was also called the ineffable name. Now, before we go any further, within the spiritual technology of the ashram of Umbanda, a Jew is one inwardly who has circumcised their heart in the spirit of the God force, dominated their lower animal nature, and is committed to manifesting heaven upon earth, of overshadowing the low vibration frequencies of the 3rd dimension with the higher dimension, 5th dimensional consciousness of harmonic universe number 2, thus bringing heaven to earth in fulfillment of the divine plan. That is a Jew. This is not an ethnic reference. Has nothing to do with Israel, the geographical land that is part of the beast system. This is a spiritual reference. However, in the technologies of the Old Testament, it was forbidden for those Jews at that time to pronounce this name of God. Now, all this prohibiting and forbidding, it seems to have been for the purpose of concealing from todos los gentes del mundo, from the masses of people, the fact that the ineffable name applied not to any God, but to the 4 great principles of creation, symbolized by the Sphinx in their various manifestations, which constitute the basis of the Kabbalah. Now, I'm only going to touch upon this briefly, but I want you to try to begin to understand the esoteric meaning of these powers that are within you. Now, the 4 letters conceal a deep symbolical meaning. The first letter, called Yod, expressed the active principle, the initiative, the masculine, the injecting principle. The second, called He, the passive principle, the receptive, the divine feminine. The third, Vau, equilibrium, a bridge, if you will, a power of correlation, of correspondence, but in equilibrium. A bridge that united these 2, the active, passive, masculine, feminine, the yin, the yang, so on and so forth, the negative, the positive. And this union produced the next creation, or the second, He. This is manifestation. This is creation. This is the Word. This is what the Word means. This is God. This is the very genesis of the universe. This is the creative power that is within all of us. This is not some outside of us. This is within us. To those that know how to seek, and those that know how to be courageous, to know, to dare, to will, and to keep silent. Now, I'm sharing this spiritual technology. That's not violating the dynamic of being silent. I'm talking about in my personal life where I see the power of God work. I'm not necessarily going to be talking about the miracles that occur in my life on a daily basis. But I will tell you they do occur, and the power is yours as well. You just got to get beyond this external savior program of organized religion, the enslavement protocols, because that's this satanic business. Now, in the ancient sciences of the cosmic masters, the secret word Yod Heh Vau Heh represents Jehovah. Yod represented the divine man, and He represented the physical man. Vau was the bridge united the two. Now, in this, what I'm sharing, if you look at this image, it is Yod Heh Vau Heh, but it is stood in a vertical column, and it looks like a man or a humanoid figure. But this is the bridge. Could be number one. Stack it nuts. Another one beside it, and you have the divine 11, that which bridges heaven and earth. But this is the power that you have to bring heaven to earth. This is the power of magic. This is the power of the Magi. This is the science of miracles. Now, in sharing this information, I'm going to be responsible, and I'm going to talk about black magic. I'm going to talk about power of your intention and all of this, because there are many false prophets and there are many people being misled. And I'm going to share some works from the book of divine magic, and I'm going to try to read as much of this as I can as a caveat, as a understanding of theurgy, of divine magic, of white magic, of manifesting heaven upon earth. Initiation is a work. It is work. It is a work of inner organization. And it is a ceaseless. Okay, this is where you monitor yourself and your energies ceaselessly. And this ceaseless effort to purify and acquire the mastery of self, of the higher self, in total control of your lower animal self, your lower ego. Yes, the ego is a vital component of your divine anatomy, but if it's not controlled by the higher mind, by the angel mind, it runs amok, and thus you have what happens in the third dimension of harmonic universe number 1, which is hell, is the highest region of hell. This planet is a prison planet of hell. If you are living under the power of Satan, you're in the highest level of hell. And trust me, you can go deeper into hell until you finally forsake your soul in the second death, which is a spiritual death, and you become beholden to the dark one. Now, in view of this, it is disturbing to see ever-growing interest in books about magic and the occult sciences. Far from expressing a need for genuine spirituality, it is a sign of men's eagerness to immerse themselves in things unknown and all that is mysterious and forbidden. The results speak for themselves. Instead of making people well, balanced, wiser, and pure, these books unleash the obscure forces slumbering within them, confuse and cloud their minds, and deliver them into the hands of inferior entities, inferior devotees of the Shadow Lord. And they exist. Hell is real. Demonic energies are real. And for centuries, the church made the mistake. Yes, the church, your organized religion. It wasn't a mistake. It was a willful obfuscation and willful enslavement of opposing everything to do with the divine sciences. They totally broke the power of the Sphinx, what it represented, and created their anthropomorphic God to create the Roman state church and the cathedrals all over the world to enslave man and their consciousness. But essentially, it was totally doing away with the tradition of divine magic, of the power of the people. Now, the opposite extreme that prevails today is not an improvement, for it means that everyone, however weak, vicious, and ill-intentioned they may be, has access to the occult sciences. If initiates in past centuries obeyed the precept to be silent, it was because they were well aware that initiatic science could become a very dangerous weapon in the hands of those who were not properly prepared for it. The nature of men is such that however sublime, however divine the truths that are revealed to them, they will always seek to use them for their own selfish, personal ends. Whatever you give them, even if it is intended to help them and do them good, they manage to turn it from its true purpose and use it to ruin themselves and others. A great deal of experimentation is going on today in an attempt to find out more about the power of thought, about how people and objects can be influenced or acted upon from a distance, about how to gather secret information. There are people who use the power of thought to influence athletes, taking part in sporting competitions, for instance, to ensure that their chosen athletes win and others lose. Not to mention those who impregnate objects with harmful influences before sending them as gifts to certain highly placed statesmen or political leaders, in the hope of injuring them or their country. The current research into the power of thought, with a view to using it as a weapon of destruction, is as dangerous as that devoted to atomic weapons, and from a moral point of view, even more reprehensible. Man has no right to use the divine factor of thought to do evil. This is black magic or sorcery, and those who practice it must be warned that sooner or later they will be punished for it. There is nothing intrinsically wrong in wanting to know more about the powers of thought. But, and interestingly, that is how you pronounce Thoth, the original Magi, the original emissary of light, Jehuti. But even here, unfortunately, there are always those who are sufficiently immoral and unscrupulous to try to use this knowledge for their own ends. Man's lower nature is always there, ready to manifest itself and urge him to exploit every means he can get his hands on. This is why several races of mankind have already disappeared from the face of the earth. And our own will meet the same fate if love and kindness, the moral dimension, are not given priority. Left to itself, the intellect has no sense of right or wrong. And this means that when it is given the upper hand, its only concern is to put more and more highly sophisticated technical and scientific means at man's disposal. It never asks what they will be used for. And the same is true of the occult sciences. Do not make the mistake of thinking that if people are attracted to the occult sciences today, they are motivated by lofty mystical or spiritual aspirations. Not at all. They are often out and out materialist. But as others tell them that the occult sciences might provide them with the means to fulfill their ambitions, they say, "Why not try it? Let's see if it's any good." And so they try. Human beings have quantities of needs and desires. There is no lack in this direction. What is lacking, though, is the intelligence, patience, and perseverance to satisfy these desires. They always think that there must be easier ways of getting what they want. When someone suggests the use of magic, therefore, they see it as a possible shortcut to success. They are ready to try anything. Now look at all the publishers who have recently begun to produce books about occultism. You can find detailed instructions in some of these books about how they accomplish the most dreadful deeds, even how to make a pact with the devil. You probably do not realize how serious the situation is, but a great many people, many more than you imagine, put these things into practice. And what is more, they succeed. Why? Because their passions and lusts and obstinacy with which stubbornness, with which they try to find ways to satisfy them, are a lure and a nourishment for infernal spirits. It is this that attracts them and enables men to communicate with them and, as it were, infuse life into them. Nobody realizes the dangers involved in black magic. What a terrible responsibility the authors and publishers of these books have, as their only concern is to make as much money as possible with them. They take care not to give their readers any explanation or warning of the dangers involved in putting their formulas into practice. They do not care if they cause others to lose their souls. And trust me, if you're alive right now, and if you're at all aware, you will have the opportunity between now and June to lose your soul if you're not focused on your spiritual path. Many have lost their souls. Many want to lose their souls. People who have never learned to control their instinctive impulses and appetites can pick up these books and find the means to satisfy all their basest desires. How could they possibly resist the temptation? One wants to win the love of a particular man or woman. Another wants to revenge himself on an enemy. Others want to satisfy their ambitions and their cupidity. And as these desires are stronger than their reason, they decide to have recourse to black magic. It is so tempting to think that one can fulfill one's every wish. Think of all the men and women who know perfectly well that alcohol and tobacco are bad for their health, but who are incapable of giving up drinking or smoking. And we see exactly the same thing where practices of black magic or sorcery are concerned. Why give such potent weapons to people whose weaknesses and uncontrollable desires and passions inevitably lead them to use them to injure others as well as themselves? Yes, they injure themselves too, for such practices attract terrible entities who devastate those who use them. But nobody warns them about this. Consider this your warning, dear viewer. This is why I say that the authors of books of black magic must realize that they are criminals, and that one day divine justice will punish them for what they are doing. When that day comes, they should not be surprised. No one has the right to lead human beings to hell. We only have the right to lead them towards heaven. Now, history records many, many cases of people who have perished in dreadful conditions because they have dabbled in black magic and sorcery. To be sure, black magic gets results, but it must be avoided at all costs. For you must realize that it involves great dangers. Sorcerers and black magicians are on the road that leads straight to the abyss. What is the good of having spiritual ambitions if one is not even conscious of the immediate or long-term consequences of one's acts? Certainly, when human beings first become aware of the existence of the invisible world and its inhabitants, when they first learn that they possess psychic faculties which make it impossible for them to act in that world, they are greatly tempted to see what they can do. Now, this book I'm reading from is the Book of Divine Magic. It is from Omraam. If you just search out the word O-M-R-A-A-M, Omraam Mikhael, the great Bulgarian saint, who even Einstein looked up to. When Einstein was asked who he admired, he said, the whole world bows down to me, to Mount Einstein, but I bow down to Omraam, O-M-R-A-A-M. Mikhael, I forget it, I can't say his last name, but if you look up the Book of Divine Magic and Omraam, you'll get the full name. And but incidentally, Om, yes, like Om, Ayum, like O, Oyum, Banda, Om, Banda, Om, Ram these are two Sanskrit words that Om is this creative principle where you're invoking, and Ram is this where it's like this, it essentially means it's like the other polarity to Om, but it is a synchronous and divine symmetry between these two forces of creation. It's much like within Yod Heh Vau Heh, Om Ram. Anyway, that was a side note. So I continue reading. But I bring that up because now I'm about to speak in the first person. And this is Omraam talking about when he was a kid and discovering these occult powers. And he says, I remember that when I was very young, 14 or 15, I made all kinds of experiments which were not at all highly recommendable. I would entertain myself by using mental suggestion to make one of my friends do something. By concentrating on him, I would get him to take off his beret, for instance, or look for something on the ground, or talk to a passerby. I was just experimenting to see what I could do. Sometimes when I went for a walk in the park by the Black Sea, when I was living at Varna at the time, all the benches were full and I could find nowhere to sit. So I would stand a little way off and concentrate on one of the people sitting on the bench thinking, go away, go on, get up and go. And sure enough, after a few moments, he would get up and walk away, and I, as innocently as could be, would take his place. One day, I remember I saw a friend coming down the street towards me, and I concentrated on his right foot, so that all of a sudden he was incapable of taking another step. I saw him stop and lean against a tree. I went up to him as though I were there, purely by chance, and he said, "Oh, Mikhael, I'm glad to see you. I don't know what's the matter with me. I can't walk." "Don't worry," I said. "It's probably nothing. It will soon pass." But I did not tell him that it was I who had made him lame. Yes, that was the kind of thing I did. Of course, I had no right to do such things, but I was very young, and although I had no one to advise me or tell me what was good and what was bad. And then, when I was in bed one night, something happened that I have never forgotten. Two figures appeared before me. I was not asleep, but perhaps I was not very wide awake either. Anyway, in this drowsy state, I saw these two apparitions before me. One of them was very impressively built, and everything about him spoke of strength and power. But the expression on his face was extremely harsh, and there was something dark and terrible in his eyes. The figure beside him, by contrast, was radiantly beautiful, and his eyes expressed the immensity of divine love. It was as though I were being told to choose between the two. I was very impressed by the power of the first, but my heart and soul were seized with horror at the terrible evil I could feel in him, and I was more drawn to the other. I chose the one whose face was the face of Christ, who was the picture of gentleness, kindness, and self-sacrifice. Now, when I think of those days, I can see that if Providence had not helped me to choose the right path, I might have become a black magician myself, because even in my youth, I had exceptional psychic abilities. What saved me was the fact that I was not bad. I only made all those experiments out of curiosity. Now, I'm going to hold up there because I want to share from my own personal journey So I've talked about from August 11th of 2021 up until September 24th of 2021. And I've kind of more so focused on these bookends of August 11th during the Lion's Gate, where I had this incredible experience, where I can tell you was essentially receiving the energies of the fourth ray, having my heart chakra activated, and those energies beginning to inform my life. And so between August 11th and September 24th of the year 2021, I went through many changes to culminate in the grand change, which was the full Kundalini activation. Now, part of that, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because my soul was tested. And of my free will, it didn't happen exactly like how Omraam talks about with the two figures, but it came about. And I'm not going to get into the details because this is very personal, but suffice to say that I too had to make a choice between those two polarities. Yes, we understand them as Satan and God. Of course, I know who I chose. I'm not going to say. Perhaps you can leave in the comments, because I don't know how I come off to people. And in fact, I constantly introspect. I still have lower animal qualities that I deal with. And so, I could be Satan to you or to anybody for all practical intents and purposes. I believe that I am on the path of the godly. And it's a path that I must introspect and keep constant vigilance over my energies. But I wanted to offer this information and read from that book, because this anthropomorphic God of organized religion, who has externalized these powers, like you're praying to something outside of yourself. And I think a lot of people do know at this point in time that within them is the power. Their consciousness is the power. Their intention is the power. But I wanted it to make known. I wanted to read that information because, this information does have responsibility. And if you're trying to use the power of your mind and all that to have an easy ride and just get more of the same, of course, everybody has their path and their free will to do as they choose. But what I just read it is a serious crime to use these divine gifts to satisfy the lower animal nature. And so I wanted to put this responsible message out there that in any of these videos of spiritual technology and this information I'm sharing with folks, all the information's out there. Sure, you can go buy lots of books and stuff, but I have these books too, but very rarely do I see a talk on the level of sobriety and the caveat, the warnings and such as Master Omraam has shared in his book of Divine Magic. So I'm merely wanting to emphasize that these powers are real. The power within you is real. But between now and June, the wheat and the chaff, the continual separation of the higher dimensions and the lower dimensions. I mean, those people who want to use these powers to get more of the same, it's all going its own separate ways as per the divine plan. Namaste, namaskaram. Please do the right thing. Hit the subscribe button and leave this video a thumbs up, as it indicates to the algorithm that you want to use your divine powers of theurgy to manifest heaven upon earth.